Yes. Welcome again to the Washington Echo. If you don't know what it is already, as always, like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to click the like button. It helps with the algorithm for the video to send out. You don't know what that is? So we're gonna do another review tonight about Thomas Sowell. I did a review on one of his books, The Hidden Truths Behind Slavery. Tonight we're doing one about the who ended slavery, who was the first nation to start killing off slave traders and destroying ships and all that in the Pacific and in the Pacific Ocean and in the Indian Ocean as well. I think it was. Okay, so let's get into it. Not too much talking. Let's get into it and see what's what.
The British stamped out slavery, not only throughout the British Empire, which included one-fourth
the British
of
is the one who started
whether measured in land or people,
and in slavery,
but also by its pressures and its actions against other nations. For example, the British Navy entered Brazilian waters in 1849 and destroyed Brazilian ships that had been used in the slave trade. The British government pressured the Ottoman Empire into banning the African slave trade.
Brazilian ships.
Later, threatened to start boarding Ottoman ships in the Mediterranean if that empire did not do a better job of policing the ban. Still later, Americans stamped out slavery in the Philippines. The Dutch stamped it out in Indonesia. The Russians in Central Asia. The French in their West African and Caribbean colonies. Germans in their East Africa colonies often hanged slave traders on the spot when they caught them in the act. No non-Western nation or civilization shared this animosity towards slavery that began to develop in the Western world in the late 18th century,
as well.
Reached its peak in the 19th century, and continued to fuel the anti-slavery efforts that were still necessary in much of Africa and the Middle East on into the first half of the 20th century. This worldwide struggle went on for more than a century because the non-Western world in general resisted and evaded all efforts to get them to root out this institution that was an integral part of their economies and societies.
It was a
when
big
the British ambassadors of the Ottoman Empire first raised the issue of abolishing slavery with the Sultan in 1840, he reported this response.
That I knew.
I had been heard with extreme astonishment, accompanied with a smile at a proposition for destroying an institution closely interwoven with the frame of society in this country, and intimately connected with the law and with the habits and even the religion of all classes, from the Sultan himself on down to the lowest peasant. Similarly, the Maoris of New Zealand responded to comments on their enslavement of some fellow Polynesians on other islands by saying,
"We took
possession in accordance with our customs, and we caught all the people."
Well, it was a global thing, so
some ran away from us.
Technically, our
These
countries
we
were going to be involved in
and others
it was
killed.
global.
But what of that? It was in accordance with our customs. When British Foreign Secretary Palmerston sought in 1841, through his representative counsel, Atkins Hamilton, to get the ruler of Zanzibar to end the flourishing slave trade there, this was the response. When Palmerston continued to press for an end to the slave trade, Said pleaded that if he acceded to British demands, his subjects would withdraw their loyalty from him and support another claimant to the throne.
Again, because
and was he not looked
slavery
up
was
to by
big for
all
those
Arabs
economies back then,
as the
so
person who should protect and guarantee for them their dearest interests, the right to carry on the slave trade? He reminded Hamilton that Arabs were not like the English and other European people who were always reading and writing and were unable to understand the anti-slavery viewpoint. The British obsession with it was quite inexplicable to them. In short, what was so patently wrong about slavery
those ships,
in the eyes of Western civilization of the past 2 centuries was almost incomprehensible to many non-Westerners.
No pollution, but then
some westernized elites or intellectuals in non-Western societies also became embarrassed about slavery. But these societies developed no such fervent anti-slavery movements as those which propelled successive European and European offshoot societies to ban this practice for themselves and to stamp it out, among others. In the Western world, hostility to slavery was by no means confined to elites. When a British ship stopped at Zanzibar in the 19th century, it was considered dangerous to let British sailors go ashore, for fear that they would riot if they saw the slave market there. In the years leading up to the abolition of slavery in Brazil, soldiers and their officers no longer believed in the legitimacy of slavery, and so dragged their feet when assigned the task of recapturing runaway slaves. Soldiers continued to be sent to places where slaves were on the loose, but were not afraid to express their unwillingness to capture fugitives. The commander of an army unit sent to a community in Sao Paulo early in 1888 agreed to maintain order, but openly declined to capture slaves. In places runaways were loitering on the roads, refusing to work. Army units sent to control them did nothing. Not all Brazilian soldiers refused orders to control or recapture escaped slaves, but there was enough opposition to this role that a formal request was made to the civil authorities by the military to relieve them of this distasteful duty. With public opinion increasingly hostile to the continuation of slavery, and many Brazilians keenly aware of and painfully embarrassed by the fact that their country was the last one in the Western world to still have slavery, the plantation owners were increasingly isolated, and some began freeing their slaves themselves in anticipation of official emancipation, and in some cases, in hopes of retaining these workers as employees.
But they don't teach these things in school.
When the official date of emancipation arrived in Brazil, most
slaves and all that, and even the armies,
either having been freed by plantation owners or having simply left the plantations on their own, secure in the knowledge that the surrounding population was not likely to cooperate in their recapture and return. Still, when the official day of emancipation arrived, it was a cause of national celebration.
When was that?
The novelist Machado de Assis recalled that the celebrations following the passage of the Golden Law were the only instance of popular delirium that I can remember ever having seen. One Sao Paulo newspaper described the crowds that gathered to celebrate. To try to describe the splendor of that festival of joy, to tell everything that happened, falls beyond our abilities. Never has this capital seen such multitudinous and unanimous enthusiasm. Perhaps at no other period of history was the contrast between the Western and the non-Western world greater. Here was the scene when the Ottoman Empire announced the end of the slave trade. In 1855, when the Sultan's firman was read out in Mecca and Jeddah, it caused a revolution. Turkish officials, including the Qadi who read the firman, were murdered, the garrison shut, and Mecca was in a state of revolt until the Porte repealed the obnoxious order. And when the Governor General of the Hejaz issued orders on 25th February 1860
which family is going to get less money
slave trade in all Turkish ports in the Red Sea, there was great excitement and fear of the recurrence of the 1855 violence. There was no Ottoman cruiser in the Red Sea capable of giving effect to this order, and Turkish officials were too frightened to enforce it. Although the slave trade was formally abolished in the Ottoman
people like free labor.
under pressure from the
as
British
far back as I
government,
can think, people
slavery
today still like
itself
free labor.
continued. As of 1891, the imperial palace purchased 11 slave girls for its harem, as others in the Ottoman Empire purchased women as concubines, typically white women from a region near the Caucasus and the Black Sea, known as Circassia, even though every nation in the Western world had by then outlawed slavery. Not only the Turks accepted such slavery, so did the Circassians. Mothers often groomed their daughters for this role and sold them into what was considered to be a desirable situation, at least by comparison with what was available in Circassia. British Foreign Secretary Palmerston said, "The only complaint we have ever heard from the Circassians has been against our attempts to stop the traffic." Contrary to the myths to live by, created by Alex Haley and others, Africans were by no means the innocents portrayed in Roots, baffled as to why white men were coming in and taking their people away in chains. On the contrary, the region of West Africa from which Kunta Kinte supposedly came was one of the great slave trading regions of the continent, before, during, and after the white man arrived. It was Africans who enslaved their fellow Africans, selling some of these slaves to Europeans or to Arabs, and keeping others for themselves. Even at the
Anyway, so you see, even though the English Empire started the ending of slavery, it still doesn't absolve them from the benefits of slavery, because don't forget, the British Empire, which I said, the sun never sleeps on the British Empire because they have colonized so many like islands all over the world, like in Africa, the continent of Africa, in the Caribbean, and in all those places that they colonized, So they benefited greatly from slavery. And don't forget, most of the crown, the jewelry they got from the British Empire is from Africa. Even the present day crown that the queen, well, she's dead now, well, the king now, even that crown still have a diamond in it from Africa, which they would never return. And all those rich arts and culture things they took away. But you have to give them props for still started the process of ending slavery, which most people don't know. 'Cause I didn't know this myself. And I didn't even know Brazil had slave ships where the English destroyed. So you see what I said, these things wasn't never taught in schools. If you don't do your own research and get some more knowledge on this product, you'll always be still thinking about this Western ideology where the West try to twist the narrative of slavery and ending of slavery back, and then in America act as if they were the one who ended slavery, period, worldwide. No, they did that lately in what the president name who did that the president that ended slavery, man. He's on the $2 bill too, I think. Anyway, the fact that they ended late, and it's only when they wanted us to fight in the Civil War when they promised that we will be free and which is a whole other story, a whole other video to get into. But people keep Thomas Sowell, as I tell you people, he's a brilliant economist, and he have done studies worldwide, globally. He have done different research and different and he as I said in an earlier video, he written a lot of books and he have been to all the big schools, Harvard, Stanford, all them. He's a professor, but he's retired now. But the guy is very knowledgeable, and people don't like him because they don't like when he speaks about slavery or economic, or when he talks about the affirmative action, which he did speak on a couple of times, or the prison sentencing and all of those stuff. So people look him up. Thomas Sowell is a brilliant guy, and you get some more knowledge and gain some more knowledge on him. Anyway, this is much for this video. I'm out. Stay tuned to it. Peace. Boom bang.